I'm going to introduce my next peers. We call it Resilium UK. It is Paul and Alistair. You're experienced in the field of aviation and safety critical systems engineering. Working as head of safety and the group leader of airworthiness in BAE, consulting in kinetic, and being an implementation consultant in CGE Risk Waters Kluwer for quite some years, for the bowtie and barrier management principles. Alistair knows when a control is critical, I would say. If you are in systems engineering, you have a criticality discussion about airworthiness,
I have an idea.
You have an idea, yeah. So, I think Alistair likes to bring in a lively conversation, paint the world with words.
I talk too much, is what he says.
I'm learning it to be less Dutch direct. Together with Paul, he heads up the UK Resilium office. So, thanks. And Paul McCulloch, you are calling yourself subject matter in bowtie.
Am I? Okay, I am, yes.
Yeah. Like tools, you are a chemical engineer at trade.
I am.
Yeah. Auditing, setting up process safety guidance, and you also you like tools. I think.
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
And like Alistair, I can talk for days about bowtie.
Yeah.
Without any slides, just with a whiteboard.
So I think if we're going to do the workshop, also feel free to raise a hand and say, hey, maybe now make your point. And that's just kidding a little bit, but I just like you guys to be so vocal and so passionate about this. So enjoy.
So this is kind of a bit of an icebreaker, get people talking. When we go into the workshop bit, we don't want you to go with your colleagues. We want you to break up and talk to other people. So the bit about common hazards here that the renewable industry sees. So it's not necessarily wind-centric, this. There are a lot of common hazards that if you're making renewable power, then at some point it all becomes the same thing. We're making electricity, we've got to deal with that electricity. I think we've got Mike from storage here, so there's that storage piece around as well. You know, it's all together. We've got to deal with these common hazards. And then we've got, at the end of the workshop, we've got a little bit of a pitch about this Renewables Club. Yeah, we're all dealing with these common hazards. Actually, why don't we get together and work out how we should deal with them? Maybe we write some bow ties, maybe we write some guidance, but we have a shared approach. Yeah, we work together. Yeah. Okay. So the common hazard piece, you know, we want for you to go away into the workshop and start to think about those common areas where we come in. We're going to define what a hazard is in a second, and just work together and make a list for us as our starting piece. So, you know, we're not going to go away with fully built bow ties. We don't have enough time today. But what we want to get is that hazard list to start. And then, as Dan said, which we'll say quite a lot, we're looking for the next volunteer then to take that list on slightly more with another event, and we start to build things together. Yeah. Okay. So we will do the bow tie piece. And you want that? Alistair's going to do the bow tie piece, and we are trying to talk less.
So to make it really quick, hands up. Let's get moving a bit. Hands up. Who has used bow tie? Who is comfortable and confident what bow ties are? So yeah, we can fly through this, but there are some people who've not put their hands up, and that means they're either shy or we do need to go through this to some extent. We will all be around. There's a lot of Resilium people, so if you're struggling with anything, you're not following what's going on, please do find one of us and ask, and we'll talk you through it slowly. But essentially, we start with the bow tie. So we have 8 building blocks, and I'll go through each bit. The top of the bow tie is the hazard. And the hazard for us is the thing that you do that is normal business that has the potential for some negative outcome or harm. So it's the subtle shift to the traditional hazard description of a state that, if left unchecked, will result in harm. We're just saying it's normal operation, something you do that's standard. We combine that with the top event, or the centre knot. And this is the bit that's really fun because it's hard to find this, but it's the point you lose control. I always liken it to the start of a bad day, that point in the office where you go, oh, I'm not going to get to go home early today. And for me as well, I came out of aerospace, and there's a strong link into quality. I find the left-hand side of here is doing what we said we would do, how we said we would do it, when we said we would do it, normal operation, and this side is abnormal operation, so I'm recovering from something. So I'm actually paying to do something I don't want to do. I'm wasting time, effort, resources. So this is the centre of the bow tie, and it's probably the bit that's hardest for you to come up with, because I find this centre knot you move around until you find the sweet spot. Then we move on to the threats and the consequences. Now, I always like to go to the right-hand side, because I think there's a little triangle about the description that I put in here, where I say I lose control, and the things that are a direct consequence of that loss of control if we don't do anything. And I find it helps me just do a little quality check rolling around that circle. So I always go right-hand side, and then I forget the right-hand side and go, what are the threats, the causal things that will cause that loss of control? So we've built the bow tie, this is the shape. Then we get to the fun bit, the actual bread and butter of why we're here, if the button works, is we start to put barriers in. This is safety management for me. This is what we are doing to prevent the bad day. So the barriers describe the interventions that will stop that threat becoming the loss of control. And then on the right-hand side, we have two flavours really, but they're recovery. I either get control back or I mitigate, I reduce the severity of the consequence. So we have there 6 building blocks. Now, I said at the start there's 8, and the keenness of your collective engineering eye will notice that we're just scrolling through these, because I don't think we need to worry about it today. Our main focus is going to be in hazard and centre knot, with some consequences and threats, and we may get to discuss barriers later when we start to build bow ties. But the key focus for the next session is talk amongst your industry peers and start to develop a bit of a common understanding of the things that you're doing, the way you're describing it, and see if you could work out the point your bad days start, and then discuss what could happen, and then we'll move into the bow tie building space of putting barriers in bit later on. But the key thing we're interested in is, are there common issues, common themes that emerge? And some of you at different ends of the business as well. So there may be things that cause things that your business manages for the next person in the chain. And I think if we can develop a common language, we've got a very good start for a renewables club where you can start to share, compare, and save a lot of effort. So you're not all reinventing the wheel.
Okay, so the workshop piece, to get you going, get you standing up, get you thinking about stuff. So we're going to try and build those black and yellow boxes first. Yeah. So what we want you to do is think about these areas, so generation operation hazards, manufacture, construction, maintenance hazards, and supporting hazards. We picked those because we thought that was sort of a broad buckets for the different types of industries in the room. There is no wrong hazard. So you stick hazards up. We're being quite loose with the rules because some of it is you've got to work out as a team. What do you want to do? How do you want to actually start to capture this stuff? And we want you to go through, build that list, and then we're actually going to give you 3 votes. So then we want you to vote against your either favourite, if you want to call them favourite, or the ones that you are saying these are the most important hazards to me. And then as a group, we want you to actually start to take the one with the most votes, start to turn that into a bow tie. I don't think we'll get to a full bow tie today, but if we can think about what's the top event that's associated with that hazard, then start to think about consequences and threats and start to write those down. So we start to give a basis to give something away. So we're going to do them 4 teams. So potentially we could have 4 skeleton bow ties to take away, and we can share with you and a list of hazards. That's what we're trying to get to, as that foundation for what does this renewables club look like. Yeah. So important thing is try and split yourselves up from your colleagues.
So if you've come with a friend, please don't go into a group with them.
We've got 4 stations, so 3 down this side and 1 the other side of the curtains. I think the one with the nice cozy sofas probably won't work. So the far side. If we tap you on your shoulder, it's because we're looking to make you move and balance some of the groups out a bit better. But so get yourselves a drink, start to decide where you want to be, and then let's see what happens. Yeah. And the Resilium people will come along and poke you sometime if we think you're not going in the right direction we thought you should go in. We'll come back together at 11:15 just to do the pitch around the Renewables Club. So we've got quite a long time to think about hazards, maybe to start to get into building that bow tie. And it is also a network piece to start talking about the different hazards your different types of organizations have. Yeah. Everyone okay? Questions with that?
Good.
You're shaking your head going, no.
And as Dan says, if you don't start talking, it gives us ample opportunity to start talking at you. So please take that pressure off us.
So I'll leave that up on the board. So you've got the 3 areas we want you to start thinking about. But if you do think about another area to add, please do in. Jasper?
Is it an idea to do a little quick introduction within the group to see who we
Yeah,
have
yeah,
in the group?
yeah.
Because we are probably new to each other.
Yeah, please do all that introduction stuff.
You're all grown up.
You're all grown ups here. Who's going to do your feedback?
Following me.
Do you want to?
Yeah.
Because we're going to do it for each group, so just a few minutes of feedback. Just talk about what you've ended up and maybe how you've ended up with it. Yeah.
I don't even know what we've ended up with yet. Yeah, but essentially, as we've been briefed with, we looked at the largest hazards that we perceive within industry. A lot of them there are the common things which I'm sure a lot of people have got. For example, working at height, dropped objects, fire, dealing with electricity, transferring persons to and from turbines. But what I can see, it looks like here that our top ones are working with electricity, essentially HV and LV, fire, including the risk that may be occurring with the use of hydrogen, or green hydrogen. We've got, again, crew transfer, and in that we considered both the CTV transfer, the SOV, walk to work, and also helicopter access, and also some of the new things that we're looking at in terms of hoisting operations and moving to ladderless designs on the turbine for gaining access. Another key one that was brought up was lifting operations, both in terms of major lifting events, so where we were bringing a crane to site or a jack-up vessel to site, also comparing with what we call the more routine lifting operations, so the day-to-day hoisting that the technicians are doing on the turbines, for example. And this one here, lack of process knowledge. We tackled that one because we think everyone knows what they should be doing as part of the work, but it becomes very apparent, especially if there's an incident, that, well, in actual fact, people didn't know what they were doing, or conversely, knew there was an issue, had a workaround, and weren't communicating that out with as well.
I think one of the other groups had something similar. I think that group over there, yeah, competency. Yeah. Any questions for this team? I think very similar themes from the other two groups, which is always a good indicator we're all in the same space. Yeah. Shall we go to the middle group?
Yeah, these are the boats. Remember, we have to work together. No, we ended up not thinking linear, and we got everywhere with trying to look at the hazards, also environmental hazards and everything. Then we did some voting and ended up with these 4 ones. We actually had 5, but we had to limit it. And the first one was working with high voltage. The voltage in the turbines and everywhere is going up. We're producing, started in a 1.2 megawatts, now we're up to 14, 15, 16. So the danger if something goes wrong is like going from a small electrical fault to close to cataclysmic if everything just short circuits at one time. So this was one of them. And we have working at heights because onshore, when you get your electricity onshore, or you do power to X, like one of the participants here of this group, we're building buildings of 40, 50, 60, 70 meters. So working at heights, is a constant risk for everybody. This one is quite interesting because in the whole, let's say, group, we see a lot of people coming from different industries joining the renewables, and how do we get these bakers, motorcycle drivers, whatever, who's never been working, let's say, in oil and gas or offshore, how do we bring them in and give the safety culture that most of the oil and gas people have got infused into their veins? How do we get them to understand that when working in renewables? And I think the last one you scratched out.
We didn't have time for it.
We didn't have time. Was I think construction and product deliveries. We talked a lot about, let's see, the availability of high voltage cables. So everybody needs high voltage cables, and there are not a lot of producers that we want to go into bed with. There are some we want to go into bed with, and some we definitely would like not to go into bed with.
I think the other thing on that was around time pressure.
Yes.
If your crane has to leave on Sunday, you've got to get that job done by that day.
Yeah.
And that time pressure, I mean, it's true of any industry, any process industry, but that's
the time pressure for your construction phase is like, because the heavy lifting vessels, the cranes, the experienced personnel is going from project to project. How do we manage that? Because we have a window, and outside that window is millions, even some of the equipment we can't use because it's just gone on this date. So this is the time frame you have for constructing your entire building, whatever you're constructing.
Yeah.
And that is just something we see in renewables.
And you run late on mechanical, and then you think electrical's going to pull us back on time. No, you can't half their time. They've still got all that work to do. Yeah.
But it's down to availability of everything: personnel, high voltage cables, vessels. Like everything in this business right now is availability is here.
And that drives time pressures.
It does.
And corners
which
get
then
cut.
leads into corners being cut.
Yeah.
Which then leads into working 24 hours of darkness, which then introduces, like, it has a list of applications.
Yep.
I would say that the only thread line that we had that I think was very common is just this fast-growing industry, and just not the pace of which it's growing, but things are growing. The size of it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
significant. So.
Did I miss anything?
Oh, that was excellent. Excellent.
Any questions?
I think that one of influx of new personnel is really quite critical to the industry. We have a lot of problems in TenneT with a lot of inexperienced people coming into the industry. So it's a good one. Well done.
Yep.
There is something in red under there as well. Is that like a
Those are
Top events.
the topics within those larger areas?
Events.
Ah, nice.
We're moving towards bowtie.
Great. I like to see it.
Shall we go to the final team?
Very similar to what everyone else has kind of discussed as well. But our main three that we highlighted, obviously electrical energy, HV in particular. Working at height, obviously that can cover a broad aspect. You've got your rope access techniques there and things, and lifting operations. We focus more on the lifting operations in the latter stages, but we were also talking about cranes, man ridings and hazard as well in the industry. But we really had very similar to everyone else.
Yeah, I see the newcomers in the industry. Yeah.
And we also talked about contractors, not necessarily newcomers, but contractors are going from site to site, working on different systems all the time. That's a hazard in itself. That comes into poor onboarding, I suppose, from us as a company. We had crew transfer as well, whether that be from helicopter or from the vessel. You've got your risk there for personnel. But I don't know if I have to add anything. I think everything's covered.
And then you
straight on to that. So we've only started one, we're ahead of the game, but we focused on our hazard being working at height and the top event being a dropped object. So obviously consequential barriers, we've got a few here. I think we can all argue fatality and injury is probably the top consequence there. Barriers in place being sort of having the lanyards and the tethers so people don't drop objects, doing a sort of sweep after they've done the task, maybe almost like a sign-off sheet of what tools were there and what tools were doing back. Talked about reputational damage. Obviously, if you drop something of quite a substantial amount, it's probably going to be rumour mill and go around everywhere, all the companies first before it's actually been advertised. I'm trying to think, that's kind of quite self-explanatory. Delay to projecting cost. You mentioned development and construction over there. Because you're not making money at that time, there is quite a lot of perceived and potentially pressure anyway on you to deliver the project on time. Threats, that's quite a sort of easy one there, but corrosion, obviously we've got aging sort of turbines now. We've got turbines coming up to 20-year-old, maybe older. But then your barriers in that would be inspections, you know, preventative maintenance. I think human factors is a big one, and I think that kind of comes under the newcomers in an industry as well, that you can't always rely on people's behaviours and attitudes. If we've got procedures in place, are they going to follow them? They should, but people can not follow them. But is that enough?
Yeah, that was good.
Keep talking,
Yeah.
it's not an issue. I probably talk more than you two.
Do you want a job?
Any questions, any comments? Grand.
Yeah, I had just a comment, just to follow up. First of all, well done, thank you. And when we did this in Vattenfall, we took in one of the things that Jasper and I will cover later today, half an hour, is the project, how we began the project, and was grabbing information from every single individual business unit and asking them to put their top risks up on the board. The top 5 that we came up with, everyone's got on their list. So it's working at height, where we began the pilot, working with electricity, because that's the main thing we deliver to the customer, and the voltages are getting higher in the turbines as well. So, and then the lifting operations, these are all things we've done bowtie on, and actually we've got confined space session coming up at the beginning of, actually in February of this coming year. So helicopter operations, we tried to do one of those, and we found that we don't own the helicopters, so we're trying to do a bowtie about something that we don't. It's like trying to do a bowtie about, I don't know, that, right? It's like we don't know it. We don't know that business. So.
But then you can change your view around. Well, actually, we transfer that. We buy that service. Yeah. We are relying on them to deliver our people safely. What questions should we ask of them?
You learn from other industries as well. When it comes to helicopter operations, because there's other industries that use helicopters all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We can help.
Talk about that.
So, I really wanted to pick up on something you just said there, because the common theme that seems to have popped up is you worry about the fact you've got a churn of people. And at the risk of doing a heavy sell here, if you had a common industry-wide approach, so your approach to process, understanding process, if you manage to display that in a common way for everybody, sooner or later as they move around your industry, they'll realise there is one way to do this. And that could be a very good bow tie to start with as a club approach, to say here's actually an industry-wide problem. Yeah, we all do lifting, but actually we have an issue with how do we get our people, which is all your people, in and indoctrinated in. There are certain key things that we hold valuable as an industry, and if you want to work in this industry, that's your psychology, that's your base level culture, to say this is how we work.
And then potentially, rather than doing it as individual organisations trying to lift that skill set, you go into your trade bodies and go, we need to do this. Yeah. We need to have a path for somebody to go through and have the right skill set we need.
Present a consolidated pain and help them work towards solution.
Let's go and sit down. We'll spend the last 10 minutes just talking about this club and where we want to go. This is around a pitch around, we know there are lots of trade bodies out there, and how well are they working, and to think about this sort of session we've just done about these hazards. And just to explain, something happened in the UK. So an event in the UK 2005, I'm looking at Mike because Mike was at a coal-fired power station. A known failure mechanism sort of caught the industry by surprise. The operator was very lucky that the event wasn't more significant than it could have been. There could have been a lot of people on the boiler when the failure happened. And the UK Health and Safety Executive kind of challenged the industry about, you don't know what you don't know about anymore. And get together, so they actually produced this generator safety integrity program, GenSIP, which was all about what's the guidance our industry needs and how should we manage it collectively and all do the same thing. Because we are stronger together than as individuals. So, put that effort into it and do that thing. So, we're very conscious, we're kind of outsiders on the renewable industry and we don't necessarily see what's really going on, but are you doing that sufficiently as an industry to start thinking about these common themes, and have we got a way of the way the industry deals with it? Yeah.
I think just to rephrase what Paul said, to give it a bit more oomph there, is you could get together and set the standard before somebody sets the standard on you after an incident. So this is about you taking the reins as we've just discussed, a new industry, and saying, actually, we're going to set the bar and we're going to set the high bar and help everybody get there to make sure that we maintain our standard and safe approach to doing this.
And I think
there's another group before that called the CCTP Users Forum.
Yeah.
Which is not the safety forum as well. Because HSE spots that as well. As new players came into the UK market from the traditional generators, we all got together and just talked safety, because we're in a competitive market, we're all competing with each other in a competitive market, but we just talk safety.
Yeah.
Around all the assets doing that.
And I think our pitch is for you to go away and think about, we've talked about who's the next volunteer to take on this next phase of, we've got some nice lists. Actually, we've got some really nice bow ties that each of the three groups kind of start to think we need to do this. Should we have a very informal club, or should it be much more formal, or should it be in something that already exists and we're just focusing it a bit better? So, the pitch from us is, what do you want to do next? Because it feels like there's a lot of valuable information on those three boards that we will give to you. We'll turn that bow tie into looking like a bow tie, and we'll share those lists, but there needs to be a next step about what are we going to do about it.
At the risk of looking like a paperclip, where do you want to go today? What do you want to do with this? What's the next step?
Yeah. And I think I'm not going to do the last slide.
A set of global bow ties within the industry, so quite high level of what we expect for the different major hazards that we identify.
Yeah. But that's your power, not our power. We help you do it. Or we give you the knowledge to go and do it yourselves as an industry. But it's really, the ball is in your court about whether you want to do that. And I do take the fact there are there's G+, there's lots of different trade bodies out there. And is it about focusing some of that? Because have you been talking about this in those sort of arenas, or actually are we actually getting together with the right set of people now to think about it in a slightly different way and think about these hazards?
I wonder how much of these bow ties have already been done or already set up for the most common?
Probably quite a few. There are
we don't have centralized
no
for this at industry level.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to tie on to a question that I was actually going to ask Paul. So the answer is, I know that we've done 6, at least in English. I know that we have a bunch more that we've done in Swedish. And we tried to share them before with Tenant, and then we, as we spoke, and we said the attorneys got involved and said that's proprietary. Like, it's safety. And the attorneys were like, you cannot share that. I was like, I'm not sharing anyone's personal information. Like, you cannot share that. We have to have an agreement. It has to be in the Swedish agreement. Yeah, I was like, okay, forget it. So, so we ran into a wall there, and we just got frustrated. So there are some barriers there, and I don't mean barriers in a good way. But the idea is, I guess, want to put it up on the board. So how do you potentially see sharing of those? Because I know we've got some bow ties that we spent days building with subject matter experts from all of the business areas that have that risk within Vattenfall. So we brought them all together into one room, And that in and of itself is a win because we're breaking down silos there. But what do we do? How do you see that happening?
This is occurring across industry. So if you look to aviation, the CAA published the Significance 7 back in 2013, and they just went very vanilla bow ties with very basic. And I think you could almost get in the same thing of what are the barrier effects we need to see across a business. How you do it is proprietary, and it goes back to you're all in competition, but there is a bar that you all need to be over. Because if you're going to do it dangerously, then you will be super cheap and you will win, but then you'll also annoy lots of people. So there is a way, if you take the model of, say, the CAA, of quite generically sharing things. RSSB for the Rail Safety and Standards Board in the UK.
There's Light Rail Safety Standard Board. They're doing that for their members.
Yeah.
They're building these global bow ties that the members are going to take on, and about how do we look at the operation of trams in cities.
Now, at the risk
there have been a number of events in the UK where a tram rolled over and because it was speeding. There's interaction with, I see lots of videos from the Netherlands where cars just go in front of that tram and it goes straight into it. And I don't know why they're always videos from the Netherlands, but they always are videos from the Netherlands.
To be fair, there are some in Manchester, but again, the way they work is they're members clubs, and members clubs have charters, and that helps the lawyers get on board because it says what you can and cannot do.
Yeah.
So there are layers of complication and obfuscation that you could introduce. I would not like to see it get too complex because that just means it's going to make it awkward. But I think you're all talking about common stuff, and so there can be a standard that would help you, because it will also mean if somebody's been trained, as we discussed, somewhere else, they come in and it won't look so different. So it will start to feel like this is how we work. So I can see David's hand there, and another hand.
I just want to clarify something, because we discussed this in our group. Are we talking purely about wind turbine club, or are we talking about the whole renewables portfolio? Does it include hydrogen, does it include batteries, does it include solar? So how big do you want this club to be?
So I think there are definite flavours. They all port into electricity at some point, so there are still some common themes emerging. What I think we've got today is a very heavily wind-biased group. So it could be whatever you want, and I think some of your industries cross these streams as well. So it's not a closed shop, I don't think, at the minute, because we've not set any rules. So, think about it, think what you want.
Yeah, so my next question is that, so during our conversation we discussed things like audits, and that audits are also a good way of kind of shaking things up a bit, going, are you really applying and doing your stuff? But who does those audits? And is that the body that actually could be, the guardian of this kind of established bow ties?
That is potentially there.
Yeah.
Just a comment, so you've got your bow tie model, but the big thing for me is how you communicate that to the workforce, that they've all got a part to play in it. So I think people think, that's just the safety guys doing modelling,
Yeah.
So we did a big programme in another industry, not renewables, where it was communicated to everyone how they play their part. So it was simple, but I'm not in a barrier model just because I do this. Well, actually you are, because you do a site induction or things like that. So it was all these kind of models.
So that is not specific to your industry, that is everywhere, is how do we get this information off my office wall, or worse, in the folder that I periodically take the dust off and replace the diagram and put it back in, and we're safe now because it's in there. It's
even communicating, you might get guys that have to use a procedure to do something. When you use a procedure, it's just time consuming. But if you can relate that back, well, actually, in the bow tie model, if you don't follow this, you could have a potential fire, and I think that's what.
So I do believe that the bow tie, because I've seen this happen where we've brought people into the room to talk about problems, is a way to really get people to focus, because you get someone just sat at the back going, and you draw them in, because we've had shop floor people who didn't want to do too much talking because of all these office people and designers and high paid suits and stuff. You bring them in and they just come out and go, it doesn't happen like that. And the reality just drops. So I really strongly believe, this is why I'm here, that bow tie is a brilliant way of communicating, but that's not the only way. and it's not necessarily the most appropriate way for certain groups of people. You've got to find that sweet spot. But I do think getting the safety stuff out of safety documentation and into the stuff that people are using to explain this bit is really important to you. And I've had it personal experience where you go and explain to the technician, I need you to do it this way because, and they go, I didn't know that happened.
But isn't like the Renewables Club perhaps a place where we can have these discussions in a way? Because I think every company is struggling with exactly the same thing. I think in Vattenfall we see the same thing. So you have your beautiful bow ties, but how does it lead to different way of working in the workplace, for example? And I think there are some really cool solutions to that may some companies may have already tried to do that, or maybe have struggled with it. So I think that might also be a great place to share those learnings and say, it's not just a place to create maybe a bow tie, but also to just discuss how do we utilize it and how do we make it get the best.
I mean, I really take Tyler's point of it's safety, it's not proprietary, it's the right thing to put it somewhere where people can access it and benefit from it. And if you invent a really good safety poster that grabs people's attention, put it in the pool, take branding off it, and just have it as a thing that everybody should have.
Just to address 2 points, the ones that Taylor addressed it as well, because we have discussed sharing bow ties, and what we have a suite of 30 plus bow ties, what we call tolerable events. But the problem with them is that they specifically refer to internal processes, procedures, etc. Which is fine. And I like the idea of a higher level one, because all you're doing is adding a bit more meat on the bones in terms of the barriers when you come down to company specific. And I know a lot of the things that we've talked about are things, for example, the G Plus have already raised, and they have documentation on, for example, working at height and lifting operations. And I wonder if there's a way we can work with them to, within the information that they publish, is to utilise bow ties as part of that to simplify the whole thing. Instead of having a 20-page document, then you've got, at the start, you have, here's the bow tie for it.
It's a 20-page document with 5 bow ties on the back.
I'm wondering if that's something potentially a solution to it as well. And then everyone gets those high-level bow ties, and then you can do what you want with them in terms of adding particular detail into the barriers that you have in your organisation.
Not everyone's going to read 20 pages.
No. But I think all the stuff you're raising and talking about is really solid, and I think if we can fill the ideas board, I think things will start to solidify, and that says either we push into, there's a subgroup in one of the existing organisations that says, let's pictorialise some of the good stuff, or let's have a separate organisation to do this. There are going to be, I think, legal barriers to overcome, because we all love the good lawyers and their help.
Deep down, we're good people.
Yeah, deep
somewhere.
So there was another hand up.
So I just thought about, so the best way, well, it should be in this way that we just prepare a bow tie, and on top of the bow tie we prepare one letter, I would say, so like a permit to work, so that we point everything out, so that we have a permit to work that fits to the bow tie. So that must be the goal, I think. So not just have a bunch of papers, and then nobody will read them.
Yeah.
So therefore, the permit will be a solution. In the end.
I think, Jan?
I think the goal for Pablo is also, let's see, creating those bow ties, and then, let's see, drawing out the critical controls and then putting it into his safe system of work, which we're also going in right now. So I think the bow ties with the critical controls, if we keep them, like you said, vanilla, that's, let's see, non-detailed, then it's just writing a critical control. Then not, let's see, introducing internal references, just keeping it.
How you do that.
Critical controls left and right. And then you can see, is your safe system of work, let's see, adherable to those critical controls that every company can do, but then we have a basis of a bow tie, which we've discussed then, that everybody can look to and say, okay, these critical controls can be managed in many ways in a different safe system of work.
So
we just have the bow tie, and we can say the critical control can be X, Y, Z, and P, how do we manage that into a safe system of work, and how does it end up at the technician without being another piece of paper?
Yeah.
Because they will throw up if we throw another piece of paper in their hands.
Yeah.
I know you're busy, but I just need you to do these other 6 documents before you start the job.
Every one of them, because then we are safe.
Yeah. And we run out of blue pens. Oh, we're not safe. Yeah. So I think that whole business of keeping the effect you want to achieve is the vanilla description. The how is internal process. That is to the business. But then someone talked about audit. Is potentially there is a function of the club, say, to go and do something that confirms that an industry is doing what they said, to give you that sort of not a wire brushing, but more a sort of a pat on the back and say well done, or actually there appear to be weaknesses here, maybe that's an area for you to focus on. So this needs to grow, this needs to be a functioning thing, and it will need to be funded if you get to that level of detail, because that audit thing is, someone's got to pay to do that.
Yeah. But there could be a step back from that around the club makes a set of audit questions you should ask yourself. Nobody comes and audits you, but here is a good set of questions you should be asking yourself.
Auditors trust use peer review.
Yeah.
We know about what we're using in the past. But because audits are an aggressive word. So peer review is somebody who's a peer, maybe a different company, comes along and looks and helps. It's something we used in Aon quite a lot.
And it was a two-way process as well. You were looking to learn both ways.
And in Uniper days we went outside, so I've been to an L and things like that, and actually we carried out an effort to me.
Yeah. Taylor?
Yeah, just a comment. To tie into your comment, Emily, and also your Patricia, about audits. Recently I was speaking with some of the leadership team in the organization, the executive leadership team, and they were on the way out to a site, and I said, why don't you take a bow tie with you, and then you can just focus on the critical controls, and those are the 3 questions you need to ask about. And the rest of it just skip. And they were like, oh, that really helped me. That really helped me nail it down to that. So there's another way to do it, to bring the information up to people at the upper levels of the organization and to get more traction. I have to say, we are very fortunate at Vattenfall is that we have their attention. We have, whether it's good or bad, we've got their attention for sure. And then another thing about communicating, working with a really nice company in the UK who are the communication specialists. And one of the ideas that was put forth, actually from some of the people in Wind, we're going to try to sort this out in, I guess, Monday. We're going to work with them to figure out one of these videos would be to say, let's say you had 2 technicians and you've got the older or experienced technician and you have a junior technician. And they turn up to a turbine and they say, the young guy says, what's all that, what's that bow tie? And they go, right, so these things here, today when we're working on height, we've got to do these 3 things and we're going to go home. Simple, right? And it's a communication. So a lot of what's happening is that we in the room, it's kind of like fish in a bowl, right? We're all in the same circle. We understand what's happening. But when we start communicating outside, we need to make it relatable to them. So if we can make these messages simple, I think that's another way to get it outside the circle.
But how do we get that information? Because if I look at myself, also the oil and gas industry, then I was on the drill and rigs platforms, but now it's very busy. And for me, I plan a lot of times to go offshore, to look in the field itself, because we can put a lot of controls, arc flash protection level 4 and things like that. But if people need to wear it, they bring also some risk with it. So if you don't get feedback back, then maybe we do something wrong, because they don't use it.
So I found one of the key things is involving them in the process of how do we inform. Are you aware of the risk? Have you seen the ugly pictures of what happens if you don't wear the PPE? And there's an exchange that takes it from being office generated to something real. And
we already do. Last, I think 2-3 weeks ago, we had a review of bowtie session. I also involve people from technicians. And they have really no idea in the beginning what a bowtie session was, but after they say, oh, this is workable. But also they have things to put in. It was very, very good.
we see people set off like this, and then all of a sudden they're leaning in because they're interested in what's going on.
Go on, third time lucky.
I was wondering, because now we're looking at the renewables part, but did we already look at what comes from the traditional industry with respect to bow ties? Because there's a lot of lessons learned there. There's a lot of big companies already using them. You can't really do the same, because if I look actually at the hazards, the majority of it is already known from the common industry, and it's now the, let's say, the high voltage, which is more new, but the rest, the helicopter working at height, stuff like that, it's all familiar. So can't we learn from that?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just the energy club
As well for broadcasting the message to the people working with it, setting up the organization as such to make it aware and under the employees and so on.
So one thing that I've observed, because I've jumped around from industry to industry, so I started in military aviation, which people assure me is not the same as civil. It still looks, when it's up there, very similar, and it still has the problem with the ground, but they're very different. And in military, every aircraft is unique. Their flying problems are absolutely magically separate to everybody else's. And I do think we have a global culture problem of my industry, because Paul's a chemical engineer, weird.
We're special.
I'm a mechanical engineer, the proper one. And these silos exist, and we laugh about it, but we also know that we actually fundamentally we talk the same language. Health and safety is the 5 steps from HSE. You know, it's identify the risk, who are we going to get hurt, what are we doing about it, have we documented it, and are we checking that we've done what we said we'd do and that nothing new has arrived. All of these things are the same, but we all think that our industry is way more unique. But there is a huge amount of stuff that's been done. There's nothing really new now. It's just subtle changes. But it's about branding, I think. So yes, we can bring it, but you've got to be careful about bringing it in, because people go, oh, it's not real. Nuclear industry, what can they tell us?
We're getting the...
managed to cooperate in the Netherlands. For example, I worked in supply chain, and sharing the pool vessels. We have the steering committee, the working group committee, and that's they were successful in combining all those. They are separate in their ways of working, but they have. That's.
Would you put that down to the fact they've had big major accidents that's made them collaborate, like they've had to fight for
So the challenge here is how to avoid having that as the incentive to collaborate, I think.
Not waiting for the accident.
Yeah.
So to tie this together and finish off and let you have a coffee break before Taylor and Jasper talk.
Before lunch.
Or lunch. Are you talking before lunch or after lunch? Yeah. So I'd like you to do 2 things for me. One immediate, one to take away. So the immediate one, I'd like somebody to volunteer and write it on the ideas board for the next session. I'd like to end the day with somebody volunteering to do the next session. Whether it's 6 months away or 12 months away is really sort of, we can talk about it. But I'd really like somebody to volunteer on that ideas board and take the torch from.
We've got the basis of a bow tie. We could have, I think, 5, 6 bow ties if we came together again in an event like this.
And then the second takeaway is to go back to your organisations and talk about how do we do this Renewables Club? Is it already existing somewhere that we've not really tapped into it, and can we shape it? Or is there something unique we need to make? Because only you guys can make it. We can't make it for you. We will share the hazard lists. We're going to think about how we share those to make it useful for everybody. And I think we'll turn the bow tie into a proper bow tie and give people a picture. And we'll just take it from there. But we really need that volunteer for the next session.
And volunteering basically just means...
Just to host.
Host, have an event space available.
We'll do all the hardware.
I was going to say, before we break, I can comment on the fact that when we had a communication with Isaac, and they said there were some resources required from Vattenfall. There was a misunderstanding that there were resources required from Vattenfall to do the organization. I said, we're just providing the space. And they're like, we got it. Just give us the space. So I can say from the perspective of hosting, I've had to do no work other than show up here today. So they did all the work. So it's really not a big commitment. It's just a matter of offering the space.
Yeah. Cool.
And you'll get €50 if you say that as well.